Without further ado, let's go ahead and move into our next session of today. I'm excited to welcome one of my team members, and definitely an expert in project management, as you can see there, Lauren Nunn. So Lauren started as an implementation consultant on our team and recently moved into the role as an engagement manager. Lauren grew up in Arizona, actually she was born in Arizona, grew up in San Diego, and has been in Los Angeles for about the last 7 years or so. And she's definitely a Los Angeles Kings, Chargers, and all sports considered fan. So with that in mind, Lauren, go ahead and come on the stage and tell us a little about project management.
Walking up to the music was really fun. Makes me feel empowered. Well, thank you for that introduction, Katie. I really appreciate it. I am a sports fan of all sorts. So if you ever want to strike a conversation with me, it's a good place to start. I wanted to share with you today because I think it's important to learn something every day, and I'm sure you're going to have your minds filled today with tons of things to learn. But coming from someone who already knows a lot about the tool, I have to learn different things today. So what I learned about myself this morning is that I apparently have a very recognizable voice. From talking to people on the phone, both Jim and Haley, who are people that I work with, have come up to me and said, I heard your voice from across the room and I recognized it. So I have no idea if that's a good thing or not, but I suppose it's better than them walking the other direction. So thank you for introducing yourselves. Awesome. So what I'm going to talk to you about today is problem solving with project management. So I'm going to take a little bit of a different perspective on this than just kind of showing you everything there is possible to show you about project management, because I would be up here all day and only 30 minutes. What we're going to focus on is taking a look at specific use cases. So Haley, I lost you. Where are you? There you are. Hi, Haley. Haley was one of my volunteers or guinea pigs to go ahead and give me a challenge to solve with project management. And we also did another one with Links Modular Solutions, and they're not able to be here today. They are all the way down under in Australia, so that would have been a bit of a trek for them. But we took their 2 use cases and we solved those problems. And then I also took a common use case that I hear from many people, and I put a solution to that. So my hope throughout this entire presentation is that you either resonate with one of the issues that has come up and you're able to apply this particular solution, or at the very least, one of the things we put in place you can use with your project management. I also want to say I will be taking questions at the end, so start to think about the challenges that you've had with your project management over the past few weeks and months, and hopefully I can help you solve those as well. I really love seeing my face 3 feet tall on a screen. But Katie already gave me a great introduction, and I really appreciate that. I will tell you that I do have a background in SaaS software, even though I've only been at Central Desktop for about 1.5 years now. Wow. And then I also graduated with a degree in business marketing management, and I've been in SaaS software ever since. So what are we going to talk about today? We'll go through the lowdown on project management. So what does it really mean to manage a project in Central Desktop? The 3 use cases we're going to take a look at, the first one is going to focus on tasks and files. A second one, project management using databases. And then the third one is actually using task list templates and the best practices surrounding those. And then we'll wrap it up. So first things first, what is project management? We know what it all is to each of us in our day-to-day lives, but as far as Central Desktop goes, it's not just that pesky little project management tab at the top of our workspaces. We manage projects using the entirety of Central Desktop. We're going to look at, as I mentioned a little bit before, databases, workflow rules, the project management tab itself, wiki pages. We can use everything within Central Desktop to go ahead and manage a project. Looking at it from a very basic level, options for managing projects are 4-fold. We can always use a workspace to manage a project, so an entire workspace dedicated to a project. And then below that, we've got levels, milestones, task lists, and tasks, as I'm sure you're all familiar with. And it really just depends on the scope of your project and how granular you want those pieces of project management to be. So let's take a quick debrief on the 3 different use cases. The first one, as I mentioned, is going to come from Links Modular Solutions. And what they originally set up Central Desktop for were client extranets. They had that up and running, but then they needed some internal processes to work on. And so they wanted to go ahead and set up a new employee onboarding process. And I'll show you how we set that up and the different tools we use to accomplish that. The second one, again, comes from Allscripts from Haley. And they were already using our database tool as a project queue and a project tracker. but they ran into a couple different issues with daily schedules and management views, so we went ahead and solved those issues with the tasks being kicked off from databases. And then finally, project management's best kept secret, we're going to take a look at task list templates and dependencies and how to shift projects. So just to kind of start us off, it's important to note that with project management, what we're aiming for is effectiveness, not just efficiency, which is doing things right, but rather doing the right things. I'm sure anyone who's worked in our system for any amount of time knows that the positive and negative of our system is that you can do one thing 5 different ways. So the best thing that we can do is find the most effective solution for our projects. What's the best way for my team to work in the system within a project? So to give us a little background, Link's modular solutions, their original need, as I mentioned before, stemmed from requirements to streamline processes and share and collaborate across the globe, so those client extranets. They came to me when they started to work on the internal processes with these 2 challenges. For their new employee onboarding process, they needed it to be scalable and repeatable. The current challenge that they were facing is that literally all the information that they had for a new employee was contained within the brains of the HR people. So they would sit down with a new employee and do an information dump, but really there was nothing concrete, and it obviously wasn't scalable in that sense. The second challenge was that they needed automated sign-off and approval. So there were multiple different checkpoints throughout the process. They never knew where the employee was at in their onboarding process, and they needed to know how soon they were going to be done and what paperwork had been filled out. So let's go ahead and take a look at how we solved this problem. So what we did is we created a workspace dedicated to employee onboarding. The first thing that I went through and did with them is created a milestone for the new employee onboarding process and asked them what tasks needed to be contained within this, and we were able to break that down to 5 different task lists. Pretty standard stuff. This is going to be, reading the employee handbook, building introduction, things like that. Because we had multiple different task lists, instead of using task list templates, we decided to use the functionality within the system to go ahead and clone a milestone. So when we're ready for a new employee, I would simply come into my milestone edit menu. Ooh, I forgot my glasses today. And clone the milestone, which is our second option here. This also provided an individualized experience for everyone. So when I went ahead and cloned the milestone, I named it for the new employee. When the new employee comes in, they've got a milestone named after themselves and gives them the opportunity to work through all the tasks they need to get through. The task lists are completely blank because the timelines varied for them and it needed to be a little bit fluid. So they could come in and, as you'll notice, these tasks aren't just assigned out to the new employee, they're not going to obtain their own parking pass. We may want to come in here and actually assign this out to someone else within the organization that needs to do that for us. And they simply went in and just hit a due date of when that person would need the parking pass by. Just simple examples. The other thing that we did, we'll go ahead and take a look at this underneath the employee handbook. We needed the employee, as I mentioned, to go ahead and fill out forms or make sure that we were at least checking in with them, that they were doing everything they needed to do. We went ahead and dropped in a permalink under the description that connects to a specific wiki page. The other thing that they were really excited about was to get concrete information into the system rather than everything being in their minds, as I said before. So we went ahead and built out a digital employee handbook using a wiki page, and that connects directly to the task to have the employee read everything from benefits to workplace safety, and they can say that they've read that after checking off the task. The final portion of this, which is slightly less automated but still allows them to get everything within the system, they're going to go ahead and store any of their other forms, tax forms, W-2s, things like that within files and discussions. It gives the new employee a chance to get oriented with Central Desktop right from the beginning, downloading those files, signing them, and uploading them again. Awesome. So what did we use in this solution? We used a workspace, first of all, as a project, that top level that we talked about at the very beginning. So the entire employee onboarding process is contained within one workspace. We also used milestones. The use of milestones allowed us to individualize the experience for each new employee. And secondly, cloning a milestone allowed us to clone a series of task lists, which made things quick and repeatable. And then finally, the permalinks and wiki pages gave us direct links into those documents and wiki pages and the information that they needed as they're going through the process. Awesome. So we're going to go ahead and move on to Allscripts. And if you don't know about Allscripts or haven't had a chance to talk to Haley yet, they're a leader in healthcare and information technology solutions. And as I mentioned before, they were already using Central Desktop for a database queue when it came to me. This database utilizes a lot of the functionality that Kevin talked about. So they go ahead and they take a web form in another workspace and have people submit project requests through there. And then all of their tasks for their project management are kicked off through database workflow roles. The two challenges that they were having with this process is that they needed a daily task queue. So they have many quick turn or hot jobs that needed to be scheduled quickly and completed quickly. And the way the database works, it was impossible to kind of schedule and manage those things. So we went through and we created a daily task view for each of their creatives, and I'll show you how we set that up. The second challenge was a management view. So there was no way for management to see how many people had these quick turn jobs on their plate and weren't able to schedule new projects for them in an effective manner. Okay. So how do we do this? I went into, this is just a sample database, obviously. So I created a sample database with a project queue. This is what that would look like with all of the requests coming in. I'm going to go ahead and click into one of these so we can take a look at the fields. This is just kind of a very boiled down, simple format of what this would look like. Your top section under request details will be something that's filled out in the web form. People will fill out basic project information to go ahead and request that. The admin section and the bottom fields allowed Haley and other admins within Allscripts to go ahead and set the parameters of this project and the task. By setting the status, the assigned to fields, and the priority of the actual task, the system knows once these fields are filled out, I'm going to go ahead and kick off a task for this project. What we did with the priority field is actually ask the workflow to mark this task as high priority by marking the priority as high within the field of the database. The second thing that we did was to actually go ahead and change the due date field from just a date to a date and a time. So we do have that capability within the database to go ahead and choose the date and time field, which allowed us to filter and sort off of that to give those creatives a daily queue. So let's look at that. I'm going to go ahead and go back to the database. And I've actually set up a customized view called Daily Schedule. So as Lauren, when I come in the morning, I can go to my Daily Schedule view. This view is built off of two criteria. One, today's date, and two, the person that's logged in at the time. So this is where I'm only seeing my tasks. And I can see right off the bat that I've got two quick turn jobs I need to pay attention to. One due at 9 a.m. and one at 12:30. Now the next thing that we focused on was management view. I need to see not only what's on Lauren's plate, but what's on William's plate and what's on Haley's plate, so that I can understand where I can allocate this work. Well, one thing that you can do within the actual database, if you wanted to stay within here, is to go ahead and add a runtime filter. And I'll show you that real quickly. Under our View Edit Actions, I have the ability to take any field within this particular view and select Runtime over here on the right-hand side. So I'm going to go ahead and do this for our Assign To field. By adding this, I've got a filter now at the top. And as management, I can come in and I can say Assign To is Lauren, and now I'm filtering to take a look at her tasks, if she was one that I wanted to assign to that. So runtime filters can be really helpful. Now you might be saying that was way too many clicks, I don't want to do that, I don't want to navigate to the database. So we have other options. Because we've kicked off all of these tasks via workflow rules, I can actually access any task that's attached to a database record through my project management view. All databases have their own task list, and they're always denoted by this little filter symbol you're seeing here. Let me move my mouse. Next to the project queue. So I can click into that and I can see a list of all of my tasks from my particular database. I can filter by priority, so I can see how many of those are quick turn jobs. And then I can start to use some of these other filters up here. So maybe I do want to see what William's tasks are or Lauren's are. I can simply do a task by filter and I can see what's on everyone's plate. Now the final trick to this whole thing is that not only will we mark the workflow rule as high, medium, or low to actually set task priority, we also have for high, medium, or low, giving management the ability to click in on tasks by hand, and I'm able to see all those quick turn jobs right away. So we've got 4 on our plate right now, and Lauren's assigned to 3 of them. Maybe she doesn't need any more for today. Awesome, so what did we use in this solution? We took a look at databases and workflow rules, which were already being utilized, and we made a couple tweaks to those. We also used custom views, which are going to allow you to narrow down the information coming into the database, especially if you're using a project queue, that's going to be a whole lot of information. So custom views are really important. And then finally, we used some advanced features within project management, including task tags and prioritization. The final use case that we're going to look at doesn't come from anyone in particular. These are just 2 challenges that I hear very often from people using our system. The first challenge is that milestones don't fit our needs. So we're going to go ahead and take a look at task lists and task list templates. I think these are kind of the unsung heroes of project management. Not many people use them, but they're very useful. The second challenge we'll take a look at is deadlines are a moving target, aren't they? I think that everyone knows this. We see this every day in our daily lives, that projects always get off track. How can we quickly shift those in Central Desktop to make it easier to manage? Awesome. So let me paint a little picture for you here on what we have set up. I set up a workspace for a project that has 3 phases. You can see them over here on our left-hand side for our task list: startup, concepting, and approval. The idea with this is that within my startup and concepting phase, I don't have specific due dates for these tasks. It's kind of a fluid process, and I hear this often. I don't like to use milestones because I have to have a due date, and it ends up being overdue all the time, and I'm constantly having to shift it. Well, that's why we decided to use task lists here. You don't have to give due dates to all of the tasks within here. Once I get to my approval phase, however, I do have a timeline. So for this particular project, I need everything to happen by September 4th because my client approval needs to happen then. By knowing this, I can go ahead and take a step back. That's what I get for editing for my presentation. I can take a step back to my concepting phase and say that my client presentation then needs to be done by September 3rd. So we'll go ahead and save that one. Now I have the ability to let my team do what they're going to do. They're going to go through and they're going to go through their startup phase and their concepting phase, and they'll finish things before September 4th. I can trust them to do that. Just like Isaac said, let's pull back from the tool a little bit, let people do what they're going to do. I still want reporting to be useful though, so what I've had people done in the past is go ahead and use this due date as a completed date instead. So let's say that we went ahead and we had our startup meeting on August 27th. I'll go ahead and I'll mark that as my due date, and then complete the task. So now reporting is still useful to me. I've got that date in there, but I also don't have to have super strict timelines. Once we finish our startup and our concepting phase, we're going to move on to approval. Now, try as hard as we might, it is September 9th, and this is supposed to happen September 4th. We love our clients, but sometimes they don't follow the timelines that we want. So how are we going to go ahead and shift this project timeline so that we know what's going to be happening in the next few days? What a lot of people don't know is that you actually do have the ability to look at narrowed views of the Gantt chart. I personally love using the Gantt chart because I'm a visual person. So I'm going to take a quick caveat into changing timelines directly from the task, but then I'll do most of the presentation from the Gantt chart. If I wanted to shift this task, I can go ahead and click into a specific task, hit edit. When I'm ready to shift this due date, I can simply move it forward, and the first thing that pops up is shift dependent tasks. All I need to do is make sure that I check this box and hit save, and it's going to move my project timeline forward. Now what exactly does that all mean? That's why I wanted to go ahead and do the Gantt chart second, so I can show you what this looks like visually. So I mentioned those narrow views. If I don't need to see my entire project plan, let's say I have 30 different task lists in this particular workspace, I actually have the ability to go in and take a look at just this task list in Gantt. I also have the ability to just look at milestones in Gantt, so you don't have to do the entire project Gantt. So let's look at this, because I'm only moving one phase. Awesome. When I get here, I can hit expand all so that I'm seeing my entire project plan. I'm going to go ahead and turn on edit mode, and we're going to look at 3 different ways that a project might shift. with task list templates. So within task list templates, you can set relative start and due dates, as well as preset dependencies. So if you ever want to use task list templates, those are the three main features that you can use within Central Desktop. And then you can, of course, manipulate that task list template after you've already dropped it into a project plan. We want to go ahead and move this entire project out to September 9th. The client has said he's going to give us approval today. So the first thing I want to make sure I do is hit Cascade Changes. What Cascade Changes does is make sure that it respects the distance between tasks if we're looking at this visually. So the time between tasks is going to remain the same when I go ahead and shift this project plan. I'm looking for my crosshairs and my 4 arrows. I'm going to go ahead and select this and drag this out to the 9th. I can tell I'm at the 9th. Maybe for the people up here in the front, you can see that it's telling me it's starting on the 9th now. And it magically shifts everything. So let's say we didn't want to shift everything. We've now got the client approval, but our internal team needs a little bit more time before we actually come back to the client with something concrete. Essentially, I want to put more time between the first 2 tasks. Because of the way I have dependencies set up, task 1 depending on task 2, 2 on 3, 3 on 4, I can go ahead and shift different sections of my project at different times. All I have to do is the same thing, hover over task 2, move this one out a little bit further, and it'll just shift the back half of my project plan. These are both things you can do with Cascade Changes on. If I take Cascade Changes off, I can now move any task independently from one another. So let's say I'm actually ready to present this to the client. I'm going to go ahead and move this back closer to the time of client approval of concept. And you can see that that moves independently and doesn't affect the rest of my project plan. So what did we look at today? Quick recap of everything that we used for project management. Not just the project management tab, but databases. These are best used when you have large amounts of custom information that need to be tracked against the project. Milestones, best used for individualized projects or very large, complicated ones that need multiple phases. Task list templates, great for quick turn and repeatable projects. And then finally, dependencies are those projects that are going to be changing regularly. Awesome, and I think I've hit just the right amount of time for questions. So does anyone have any questions on project management? Tiffany?
I have a question on the project queue.
Yeah.
Project queue. Can you do that across workspaces?
Good question. So we would have a centralized database set up in one workspace where all of that information would come in. But what generally people will do is if you want people submitting projects from other workspaces, you can do that with a web form.
Okay, but the task list that you can see, like this person, based on who is logged in, to see what I have to do that day by what time, can you do that across workspaces?
Oh, good question. That's going to be based on database by database. So if all of the tasks contained for that particular creative were within that one database, you would absolutely be able to see that in one view. But if you have multiple databases set up across workspaces, you would have to navigate to those particular projects.
Is there something like within the reporting tool that is able to allow the user to see that exact view?
Yeah, great question. So these were some of the same questions that Haley had, and because they've created workflow rules that kick off tasks, anything within project management is reportable in our Reporting 2.0 engine. So you would be able to create a report like that, but what you would miss with that is that time and date field for that daily schedule, because that's contained specifically within the database. If that makes sense. But the tasks themselves, you can go across workspace with reporting.
But not to the public, and then like based on current user.
Oh, absolutely, based on current user, absolutely. The only thing that you would be missing is that timestamp for due date, basically. Yeah. Everything else you would be able to get as detail.
Okay, great.
Yeah.
Does the user who the queue applies to have to configure it themselves, or can I go in and set up so that this person, when they come to the specific workspace, sees that task list person being used?
Yeah, great question. No, you can absolutely set it up ahead of time. So basically the default that we set on that view is going to apply to